So today I wanted to talk about driving and buying a car in Ireland. I think we've learned a lot along this process. So we've had to learn some things a little bit the hard way, and and that's what this is about too. Is I think that it can hopefully help in sharing some of our experiences, so that if anyone is doing this, whether they're moving to Ireland, to Dublin, or even to any other country, that there are some things that are good to consider when buying a car outside of the US, especially if you're an American like myself, born and raised, and you've never done anything like this in any other country. I'll first go through the differences we've noticed in terms of driving. So in Ireland, they actually drive on the left side of the road. And in addition to that, they also have their steering wheel on the right hand side of the car. So that is also the opposite of what we do in the United States. So they follow that same system that they do in the UK. As you can imagine, it's not just adapting to the fact that the steering wheel is on the other side. So you have to use your left hand to do the gear shifts, put the car in park, put the car in drive, which is something that, you can adjust to, but it's not readily in your mind that, oh yeah, my left hand's gonna do this. So that's one thing, but it's not just that. It's that you also have to remember to drive on the other side of the road, especially because if you watch a lot of American media, you will see all the time in movies and your favorite TV shows, it's like your brain is trying to register that, hey, I'm in a new place. This is what they do, but then you're still watching stuff where people still do what they're used to doing. So the other thing I think that's good to note in terms of the times that we've driven, because we actually got a rental car before we bought our car so that we could practice a little bit. Most of the cars actually are still manual cars. So it's much more restricted to get an automatic car because you limit the amount of cars you can rent, cars you can buy. If I had understood how much they still rely on manual cars, I definitely think that we both said that we would try to learn how to drive a stick shift prior to coming here, versus now we're here, we have to learn how to do it in a new place, on a different side of the road, with a steering wheel on the other side of the car. It was just too much to learn at one time. So we just went ahead and said, hey, we understand we're restricted to automatic cars, and there are far fewer automatic cars than there are manual cars. So that was one thing that we came to understand after moving here. And then the last thing I'll say before going to buying a car is the streets. You do have to maneuver through very narrow streets depending on where you are in the city. I will say that the highways have been nicely spaced out. Those drives seem to be pretty nice. The streets, especially if you look you see it kind of looks like older streets, and they're just very narrow, and it can be a little bit scary as a passenger, I think, because you can see how close you are to the cars and to the barriers, and people just navigate them regularly here. Now, in terms of buying a car, some of the things we've learned, for example, is so you can use your American driver's license here up to a year, I think. So you have some time that you can still use your driver's license, which is great. So we're going to use that for now. Because you are using an American's driver's license versus an Irish driver's license, which has its own process, which is, you have to take driver's ed basically, and you have to take a test, and so it is kind of time intensive. But one of the things we've found is for example, your insurance is going to be higher because they're insuring a driver that is using a foreign license. So that's one thing to note too in terms of costs. And then the other thing too is there used to be more cars that were imported from the UK, and I believe that that's still happening, but Japanese imported cars are also coming into Ireland. We found out after, actually agreeing to buy a car and waiting for it to populate on the registration system, that the insurance company that we have been working with will not insure a Japanese imported car. You find a select few insurance companies that will still do this, but at just such high prices that it does not justify owning the car, because you're paying such a higher insurance premium every year to insure that car. Even though it might be attractive because the price is more affordable. So that was something that we found out, and I think it can be very useful to those who are looking to buy a car in Ireland, especially, now, given that these are the market conditions. This can be helpful if, those conditions still exist for anyone who's coming over here. So another thing I also wanted to bring up is that cars are smaller. It's always interesting when you come look at them in person, but you can buy bigger cars, but they are more expensive. So we decided to go with a smaller car just because it's easier to maneuver, and we know that the streets are more narrow. So we just feel like, especially as newcomers, that's a good strategy, is to just go for the smaller car. I think the last thing too is in the US you have where you pay like property taxes on your vehicle, and you do that when you register your car, and that's based off of the value of the car. And here what's different is they have an annual road tax, and that tax is based off of the efficiency of the car. So that's something to consider too, because the annual road tax for cars that are more efficient are lower, which does incentivize usually to try to get a smaller and more efficient car. So it's something that is definitely worth considering, and because with your annual road tax and your insurance premiums, just to, as a holistic picture, if trying to keep costs pretty low, and I'm sure over time it will be easier, because once you transition to the Irish driver's license, your costs will automatically become lower. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that anyone who's looking to drive, whether that's a rental car or buy a car, that you can find some of this information useful. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.